Welcome back to Dentro la Storia. Today we're going to take a closer look at a topic we've already covered in the past, but we want to go deeper to understand the reasons behind it, and above all, who are the people involved in one of the murders, still unsolved today after more than 40 years in the history of the First Republic. A murder not committed in Italy but in London, on the eve of the summer of 1982, a very difficult year. In 1982, because while fighting was going on the other side of the world, in the Falklands, in Argentina, between the Argentinians and the English, a murder was committed in London, then made to look like a brutal and disgusting staged suicide of a banker, a man on the run, a man named Roberto Calvi, for a long time the head of Banco Ambrosiano, and overwhelmed. Right in those days, from the end of his financial institution, which was now destined to blow up, to bankruptcy. At first, it was said that Roberto Calvi had committed suicide, but that wasn't true. It was clear right away. Roberto Calvi was killed, but by whom and why? We've already talked about Roberto Calvi and his story in the past, so I'll summarize it for you briefly. The God's banker, as he was called, president of Banco Ambrosiano, a very powerful man who ended up in jail after a raid in May 1981, following the discovery of the P2 list to which he was affiliated. He had undergone a trial, was released from prison, and spent the last months of his life looking for allies, gathering sensitive documents, seeking protection, getting letters of patronage signed, and scraping together money. Why that money? Because probably Roberto Calvi had to return something to someone. The fact is that at 7:30 on June 18, 1982, the body of Roberto Calvi was found hanged on scaffolding under the Blackfriars Bridge on the Thames, right in the heart of the city of London. Calvi's neck is tightened by a rope, but the knot is not the classic noose of a suicide or an execution by hanging. It's a bowline knot. It's a knot made to hold, not to tighten. The pants of his suit are torn. Inside there are bricks and pieces of masonry, something to weigh him down, to keep the rope taut. He was discovered by a passerby who saw that swollen head sticking out of the Thames. Without his characteristic mustache, they had been shaved off, but no one knows when. Maybe they were shaved off just before to cover something up. Inside Calvi's pockets, along with those bricks and stones, there was also a small fortune in banknotes, almost like signs, symbols, left by his killers. Because at first, why are all the initial theories focused on suicide after all? The day before, his loyal secretary, Graziella Corrochet, had committed suicide by throwing herself from the 4th floor of the Ambrosiano headquarters in Milan, leaving behind a note. We were saying that if the first theories are all about suicide, it doesn't take much to dismantle those theories. Why? Let's start with that knot, the bowline knot. No suicide victim kills themselves with a bowline knot, because it's not the right knot. It's not the suitable knot. The bowline knot is only used to hold, not to tighten. Then, the conditions. Roberto Calvi was 62 years old, and he certainly wasn't a man in good physical shape. He didn't go to the gym. He didn't play sports. In fact, he was a bit overweight. His family members had testified that he led an essentially sedentary life. To manage to hang himself, he would have had to make a powerful leap to reach the scaffolding under the Blackfriars Bridge. And there, in a precarious balance, with those stones weighing him down, tie the rope, tighten the knot, and put it around his neck. Is such a maneuver plausible for a man over 60 in poor physical shape and who didn't exercise? No, definitely not. For this reason, after a few months, the English investigators who had initially dismissed the case as a suicide reopened the investigation file and closed it with an open verdict. It's impossible to determine whether it was a suicide or a murder. The English, in this sense, proved to be extremely cautious. They can't classify it as a murder simply because they can't find either a clear motive or a perpetrator. So we need to understand why, who did it, and why Calvi was in London. Calvi was in London on the run, fleeing from his world, from his past. He had escaped from Milan a few days earlier and had entrusted himself to some people he had partly known for a long time. One of these people whom we've already come across was Flavio Carboni, a Sardinian businessman, a man of 1,000 interests, mainly economic and real estate interests. But Flavio Carboni was also a man of mysteries. He knew far too many people. He knew people from the P2. He knew people from the Banda della Maliana. He knew the Trieste scene where he had set up some of his businesses, which is right in Trieste. Carboni had met two other people. One was Manuela Kleinzig, beautiful, blonde, young, daughter of an Austrian businessman. Manuela had become Carboni's partner, while Manuela's sister was with a local merchant who was actually a smuggler, mainly dealing in jeans, Silvano Vittor. It was exactly these three people, Carboni, Kleinzig, and Vittor, who accompanied Calvi on his journey. Calvi was taken to Trieste. From Trieste, he goes to a magician by motorboat. From the magician, he makes his way to Austria, where for a couple of days he stays in the Kleinzig family's house. Calvi wants to go to Switzerland. He says that there are documents there, that there is money to recover. Carboni helps him at first, then tells him that maybe it's better to go to London, that there are more opportunities. Calvi trusts him and follows him, and he is closely watched by Vitter, who at that moment acts both as a driver and as a bodyguard, but in some ways also as a supervisor, almost like a jailer. He goes to the Chelsea Cloister, a huge apartment block, we could call it a huge aparthotel, in London, a place that's actually quite shabby for one of the kings of Italian finance, from the Chelsea Cloister. Calvi is seen leaving on the evening of June 17, 1982, only to reappear as a corpse there in the Thames. So who did it, and why? We come right to the heart of the matter, to the investigation. The investigation was reopened in the 1990s, when the English police, authorized by the judiciary, carried out a new examination of the remains after the exhumation of the body. Marks were noticed on the neck that were incompatible with hanging alone. Calvi was probably strangled to death and then hanged. It was a stage scene. The first to talk about the stage scene was a Mafia informant, Manoia, the Cosa Nostra's refiner, the chemist. After turning informant, Manoia spoke with the magistrates, especially with Giovanni Falcone. And what does Manoia say? That the death of Roberto Calvi was staged. Calvi was killed. It was not a suicide. He was killed on the orders of Pippo Calò, the treasurer of Cosa Nostra, and the executor would be Francesco Di Carlo, a man of honor from the Altofonte family, expelled from the Mafia in 1979 and forced to take refuge in London. Francesco Marino Manoia paints a very clear picture. According to Manoia, Calvi had to pay with his life because he had lost the investments that Cosa Nostra had made inside Banco Ambrosiano, which acted as a laundromat, cleaning dirty money. But Calvi, in his dangerous game between Cosa Nostra, the rest of the criminal world, starting with the Banda della Maliana, the Vatican Institute for Works of Religion, which we've already talked about, Monsignor Marcinkus, the P2 Carboni, other investors, and finally Opus Dei, had lost all the money. For this reason, Calvi had to pay, and Calò had tasked Francesco Di Carlo. So it was Francesco Di Carlo who killed him. Di Carlo himself, a few years after Manoia's revelations, decided to repent, as they say, to become a state witness. And when he became a state witness, one of Di Carlo's first revelations was to partially contradict Manoia. Di Carlo confirmed that he had been ordered by Calò to kill Calvi, but he also said that he didn't make it in time. He couldn't reach the banker that quickly. The order had come at the last minute. When Di Carlo realized he couldn't carry out the order and called Calò to tell him, the boss replied not to worry because they had already arranged things differently. So who would be the men who killed Calvi? A trial was held about 20 years ago, between 2003 and 2007, after the findings of the latest updates from the investigations conducted by the London Metropolitan Police, which reopened the case as a murder. A trial was held in Rome. There were 5 defendants in the dock. One of them is Pippo Calò himself as the mastermind behind the murder. Then Flavio Carboni, Silvano Vittoro, Manuela Kleinzig, and Ernesto Diotalievi, our uncle, a loan shark, member of the Banda della Maliana. He was also a money launderer. Why the Magliana? Well, we have to go back. 1982, spring of 82, a short time before Calvi's murder. In Milan, Calvi's deputy, Roberto Rossone, is shot in the leg in an attempted murder carried out by another boss of the Magliana, Danilo Abruciati, known as Er Camaleonte, from the Testaccio faction of the Magliana. Abruciati pays with his life for that attack because he is shot dead while escaping on a motorcycle by a security guard from Ambrogio. But even back then, everyone wondered why a boss of the Magliana, one of the most powerful and feared, had come up from Rome to Milan to personally carry out that attack against Roberto Rossone. And why Rossone? Because he refused to launder money? Because he knew too much? Because he threatened Calvi? Or because he wanted to go to the authorities? All questions we don't have answers to, because after all, Abruciati is dead. It's a long trail of corpses. Abruciati, then Corricer, Caldi, but there are other bodies too. For example, there's the body of an antiques dealer, a man whom Francesco Di Carlo himself points to as one of the banker's killers. Sergio Vaccari, an antiques dealer, as they said, but involved in drug trafficking and stolen works of art. Sergio Vaccari was found dead in his home in London on September 16, 1982, 3 months after the Calvi murder. Vaccari's was a brutal murder, and it remains unsolved. The culprits were never found. Vaccari was found in his home with his skull smashed and his body stabbed multiple times. Someone wanted to silence him forever, but it's not just Vaccari. There's another man. His name is Vincenzo Casillo. We've already come across him in our stories as well. Casillo, the right-hand man of Raffaele Cutro, within the new organized Camorra. The businessman who became a Camorra member to change his life. The man who got entangled in so many mysteries. But before that, the kidnapping of Shiro Cirillo and the death of Professor Semerari. Other topics we've already covered. He may have been the spider at the center of the web, but even Casillo can no longer speak. Casillo died in a car bomb in Rome, not far from Fortebracci, one of the headquarters of the Italian intelligence services. The bomb was inside his car. It was placed as part of the Camorra feud between the Nuova Camorra Organizzata and the New Family. According to some reports, it was boss Carmine Alfieri who wanted to take revenge on Casillo, causing the final downfall of the Nuova Camorra Organizzata with his death. So was it Francesco Di Carlo or was it Vaccari and Casillo? According to the Italian magistrates, the 5 on trial, Calò, Carboni, Nanclainsig, Vittor, and Diotalavi, are not guilty. They were acquitted in 2007 due to lack of evidence. The only outcome of that verdict is that the judge recognizes it was a murder and not a suicide. For the first time, it is known that Calvi was really killed. The acquittal verdict was upheld on appeal in 2010. All of them are free. Carboni died a few years ago. Francesco Di Carlo died of COVID during the pandemic. The subsequent follow-up investigations by the Rome prosecutor's office, launched to renew the inquiry, all ended with dismissals in 2016. Because it was not possible to give evidentiary value to the elements collected. What we know today is that Roberto Calvi was not a victim of depression that led him to take his own life. He was killed by strangulation, and then his death was made to look like some kind of hanging. This we know for certain. We also know that it was a premeditated murder. It wasn't a sudden act of madness by someone. So let's try to understand who could have been behind it. According to the investigators, the murder took place in a complex environment involving at least 4 people. One is obviously Cosa Nostra, but also the Camorra, so the organized crime from the south, between Naples and Palermo. Then there's the Banda della Magliana, because Pippo Calò, the Mafia's treasurer, lived in Rome for a long time, where he established drug trafficking operations in the capital with the bosses of the Magliana. Then there's obviously the Abruciati episode, which further supports the Magliana connection. Clearly there was P2, because inside the Ambrosiano bank accounts there was also money belonging to Licio Gelli and Umberto Ortolani, the leaders of P2. They had turned to Calvi for many dirty operations, from funding the Peruvians to buy weapons, all the way to the Falklands War itself. In his letters, Calvi had hinted more than once that he had contributed to or directly financed the purchase of weapons for the Argentinians, including the Exocet anti-ship missiles. And finally, the Institute for Works of Religion, the Vatican Bank, which we've already talked about several times. This whole web, this spider's web so difficult to untangle, was the environment in which the murder took place. What is missing today to have full clarity about the Calvi murder? Just two little things. The first and last name of the mastermind, because Pipo Calò was acquitted and cannot be retried, and the first and last name of the actual perpetrator. We can't question Vincenzo Casillo, who was blown up. We can't question Francesco Di Carlo again, who died of COVID, and obviously not Vaccari either, who was killed in his home in London. Those three still remain the main suspects as the actual perpetrators. A crime committed by a single person, because Calvi was taken under the Fratineri Bridge by boat, and to get there by boat, there had to be at least two, if not three people with him. One who knew how to handle the boat, and two others to suffocate him and hang him. Finally, there's the mystery of the mustache. As we said at the beginning, Roberto Calvi was found dead without his mustache. Very strange, because the banker had always worn them almost as a symbol of himself and his presence, yet he was found like that after he had cut them off. According to the staff at the Chelsea cloister, at least the service staff had always seen him with that mustache. One hypothesis put forward by the investigators is that Calvi was chloroformed before being strangled, and that his mustache was cut off to erase traces of the chloroform. His killers would have cut off his mustache before hanging him from that scaffolding under the bridge. It's the latest mystery, the last in a long chain of mysteries. But almost 44 years have passed, and what leaves everyone stunned about this whole affair is that even today, after so much time, those last two pieces of the puzzle still haven't been put in place. The mastermind and the perpetrator, all we know is that Calvi is dead, that Lambrosiano was blown up. It was lamented that tens of thousands of savers risked seeing their savings books and bank accounts go up in smoke. But the final question is why? In Italy, once again, in the face of yet another mystery, we still can't shed full light on it. Why, after more than 40 years, can't we say how things really are? Can't we state the reality? Why must we maintain silence, secrecy about what happened? What needs to be protected? What needs to be safeguarded? What needs to be preserved? One last secret, an unspeakable secret, a secret so dirty that it doesn't deserve to be fully revealed. What are we afraid of? Why do so many mysteries remain unsolved in our country? Maybe because someone has every interest in keeping the mysteries, because certain things just can't be said, not even now. Whispering in a confessional in church? Maybe that's exactly why. Because no one is supposed to know the truth except for those few who would never, ever dream of revealing it. Because it's uncomfortable, because it hurts, because it's a truth that could compromise the image of too many people. This is the real regret of the whole Calvi affair, and of so many other cases we've dealt with during our years of investigations. And it's something that really hurts all of us as citizens because we would really like to be fully informed. But sometimes circumstances, or simply the will of a few men, prevent us from knowing the whole truth.